Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Tape Deck Media.
Step right up. Listen to the Awful Service Podcast. It's future radio on your computer phone. You've heard of Hanna-Barbera, Laurel and Hardy, Sears and Roebuck, now Doyle and Cocazello. Are you a bean counter at your boring job? Listen to the Awful Service Podcast. We've got segments, we've got guests, we've got Karens.
The Awful Service Podcast, available where all podcasters streamed. Brought to you by Tape Deck Media.
Ruddle me this, ruddle me that. We got the riddles that'll make you chat. Oh yeah, baseline stuff been through is tight. Get your funk on, we're rocking tonight. One more time.
Good morning, Ruddle Maniacs. Welcome back to another episode of Ruddle Me This podcast, episode 114. I am, as always, your faithful host, Taylor Ruddle. You can probably tell by the sound of my voice that last week my prediction came true, and I kind of lost my voice a little bit after doing some guest ring announcing at the Unified Championship Wrestling show Summer for Assault. It was so much fun to do some guest ring announcing there. Kind of funny to think that I spend so much time watching wrestling on TV and then getting to actually sort of participate in making a show happen was very kind of surreal feeling. Like it was almost like I was kind of watching, it was almost like I was kind of watching my own experience. And it's so hard to explain. It's almost like I was watching it happen from a first-person perspective. I was kind of like an out-of-body experience almost. I got to ring the bell before the match started a bunch of times, and one of my oldest friends, Elliot Samuels, is a wrestler in the company. He won a contract which allows him to challenge for any title that he wishes at the next event, which is on the 31st of May. That took me a second to remember, sorry. I'm very tired. And I actually got to go up into the ring and hand him that contract after he won, which was an incredible moment. Alrighty, so enough of that recap. I think they'll have me back at the next event. Watch this space. Today's episode is with a stand-up comedian and author that I've known for many years now, Dr. Jo Prendergast. Jo is one of the local comics on the scene here and has had quite a lot of success in running her last couple of solo shows. She did a show called The Cool Mum, which she toured all over New Zealand, and it looked like it was, I don't know if it was a sellout, but it definitely looked like it was pretty good numbers. And then her latest show, which is called Cancer and Cartwheels, I think she's kind of in the middle of touring that now, but I'm forgetting this now. I think she might have taken The Cool Mum to Edinburgh last year and is thinking about taking Cancer and Cartwheels to the Edinburgh Fringe next year, maybe? I'm getting a little muddled up here. I am very tired. So as you can see by the name of the Jo's second show, we are going to be talking about some pretty heavy topics in this episode. Jo was diagnosed with breast cancer a few years ago, and as you can imagine, for any creative, you want to use the things that happen to you to sort of feed into your art or create your art from. So Jo took a lot of her experiences that she had going through cancer treatment and turned that into her show, Cancer and Cartwheels. So yes, Jo joined me at my house and kind of talked us through the whole process, what it was like getting diagnosed, what was kind of going through her mind not long after that happened, and then we find out how long after the initial diagnosis and sort of treatment did Jo start to think, I think I might turn this into a show. So let's just get straight into it. I think this is quite a good listen. Definitely an interesting perspective compared to some of the stuff we get on the show normally. So, Ruddle Maniacs, please welcome to the show, Dr. Jo Prendergast. I almost called you the wrong name, Dr. Jo Prendergast. Welcome to Ruddle Me This.
Hello, thank you for having me here.
Yes, it's been a long time we've had this sort of in the works. I feel like I say that about every guest, but we're here today. We're in the studio. So
yeah,
thanks for
I usually like to either have about a 2-year build-up for podcasts or else kind of about 2 days. That's the variation I work with.
No in between.
Nothing in between.
That's how we do it. And I mean, I think we had something that we're looking at doing, but then maybe this was the last time you went overseas. I'm not quite sure, but you had a very short window and we missed it. So yeah,
no, that's all good, but it's nice to be here anyway.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, I will have mentioned this in the pre-show amble, but we're going to be jumping between some potentially sort of sensitive topics, so just listener beware. But I think you would have known that when you clicked on the on the thing. So yeah, so let's before we get into your story, let's kind of go back to the beginning. So like I've heard a bunch of your stories from growing up. You've done some things like you were like a cheerleader or something for the the Crusaders?
I was a 3ZB rugby cheerleader. So this was before the Crusaders franchise when it was kind of 3ZB rugby. Was
it a radio station?
Yeah, so 3ZB was kind of like a big kind of radio station in Christchurch, and so they basically kind of paid for the cheerleaders, and I think they may have been kind of connected with sponsoring the rugby team as well. But yeah, anyway, I kind of was bouncing around with kind of pom-poms and a skirt that was way too short and things like that. But,
as is tradition dictates, I understand. Did you do any other, did you have to go and do other events as well as the rugby, or was it more just...
we did things like kind of telethon and things. We'd go and kind of do a demonstration kind of thing. So there's some video footage of that somewhere.
Yep.
But yeah, that was kind of around... I don't know, 1990, I think, was kind of when my cheerleader heyday. So,
was that your first sort of foray into performing or performing arts?
No, I think my parents would say my first foray was probably kind of around the time I could walk and make any utterances, because I was kind of known as the cartwheel kid in my social circle, right. Because I think my mother said that people were really keen to have her and my younger sister around for coffee mornings, but less keen for me to come because I'd be doing like cartwheels off the sofa and then I'd be doing some musical dance number. And
wow.
Yeah, so I was kind of a bit of a sucker for attention from a very early age by the sounds of it.
So the cartwheel, so we'll get a quick plug in here, we'll go into this later on. Your current show that you're working on is called Cancer Cartwheels.
Yeah, so the cartwheels are a real thing. I was the cartwheel kid. I've even got footage of me doing cartwheels at age 7 that I found on the home movies. So,
are you going to use that in the show?
Oh yes, most definitely, most definitely. So yeah, we've got that in the AV.
Have you done the? It's a classic thing for comedians to use a baby photo of themselves to promote a new tour or something. Have you delved into that yet?
No. I mean, Good Times Comedy Club's doing a 5-year birthday, and so they've got some of the comedians with their kind of 5-year-old photos. So, but yeah, I haven't quite got to that kind of level that I'm sort of up to needing to get a photo of myself as a child.
Yeah, I suppose you sort of need to be the level where your name is the thing people come out for, and the graphics doesn't matter.
And then they go, hey, that's them when they were younger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So most of my shows so far have been sort of quite concept shows. But yeah, sort of getting back to your performing question, so I kind of would take myself along to amateur theatre group auditions when I was a primary school age kid, and was Mrs. Salt and Chocolate in the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and I was a Swallow in Wind in the Willows, and various things. So, and then kind of high school productions and musical theatre and mid-school reviews and sketch groups and improv and all sorts of stuff. So
that's right.
Yeah, so everything except stand-up comedy.
Right. I was going to say musical theatre thing. I think actually maybe the first time I'd ever seen you was you were playing a character in what was that play? It was called like The Lifestyle or something like that.
Georgie Sevier sort of directed that. So yeah, Craig Westenberg, if anybody's listening, was my love interest in a swingers party, and there's a scene where I'm chasing him around a bedroom and he's in a woman's G-string.
Oh, that's
with
right. I'd forgotten
fake
all about
pubic
that.
hair on it, and and I'm kind of I'm some kind of washed up ex-Vogue model from the 1970s, and he's kind of some young stud. So
that's right.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun.
Yes, I remember that. I remember it was so funny because you had some kind of headdress or head like wrap.
Yeah,
or
I had
something
like
on.
a Farrah Fawcett wig.
Is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of like to.
And I remember not recognizing you because that was totally different to like what your actual hair was like at the time. And then ages later, I went, "Oh, that was Joe." That
Just
I was
like,
in that.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, it's the power of my acting.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
didn't recognize me as. I can't remember what my name was, but I spent most of the time smoking and kind of posturing around the place. But,
you Clark Kented me there. I didn't realise the Superman and Clark Kent was the same person.
Yes.
So you've done all of that. And then you first sort of had a go at stand-up sometime, what was it, maybe 5 years ago now?
2017
Oh, okay.
was
No, that's a
my
lot older.
debut. Yeah, I was on a TV show pilot with the likes of Jack Ansett and was overheard roasting Jack backstage, and another comedy producer said, "You should try stand-up comedy."
Oh, nice.
And I went, "No way." And then suddenly I was doing stand-up comedy, so not very assertive.
Do you remember much about your first gig? Like, were you, because you've had a lot of performing experience at that point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, quite a lot of my first gig made it into my first solo hour of the Cool Mum.
Yeah.
The kind of, you guys are legit Gucci if like 100 Peters sure. That was kind of part of my very first set, because I was at a stage where I had a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old, and they were all using teenage lingo that I had no clue about, and I spent my entire life on Urban Dictionary trying to work out what was going on.
That's right, the Urban Dictionary, because both of those are now, they're in uni and stuff, aren't they?
Yeah, so
Time
24
flies,
and 21 now, so yeah, definitely. But
has it all felt like it's gone quite quick, or is it...
there were times when they were both 16 where time stood still. It was kind of like, let's just press fast forward and get out of here.
Right.
But they do say that kind of it flies by when you're a parent.
Yeah.
One minute they're a tiny baby, and next they're off kind of having tiny babies. So.
Yeah. I still remember there was that great line. Is it, are your children's names out in the shows, or are they not?
Yeah,
So
Charlotte and Angus,
she, you did an impression of her saying she needed to watch a DVD to calm herself down.
Yeah, that kind of,
good.
I am feeling frustrated and overwhelmed, and I need to watch a DVD to calm myself down. Yeah, she said that at 4. So you can imagine what she's like at 24. She's very articulate.
I hear that in my head whenever I'm looking through DVDs or something.
Right.
I just think
I need to calm myself down.
to watch a DVD. What was her go-to DVD?
Oh, it's a very good question. I think... Wiggles were pretty big.
Yeah.
That kind of, hot potato, and Big Red Car, and all those kind of numbers. We went to a lot of, because we were in Australia, we went to a lot of Wiggles concerts.
Oh,
they
really?
were kind of like,
I heard a rumour once that the Wiggles are a bit like the Beatles, and that they aren't all allowed to fly on the same plane together in case the plane goes down. They can't afford to lose all of the Wiggles in one go.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's true or not.
I think this sort of was, the Wiggles keep being replaced with other Wiggles and kind of diversifying in all directions. So
I think they've only got 2 or 3 of the...
maybe even only one of the original Wiggles.
Yeah, and then the yellow Emma Wiggle, she was there for a bit but was replaced. I think they replaced her with 2 yellow Wiggles or something. But
it got more and more complex. It started off pretty simple, just kind of 4 blokes and Captain Feathersword.
That's right. They're building out the Wiggleverse. They did a lot of characters though, didn't they? The Dorothy the dinosaur, was that a Wiggles?
My son was obsessed. He spent a lot of his childhood with the dinosaur tail on.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. I was talking to a friend the other day about the sort of childhood obsession with dinosaurs. What do you think it is about dinosaurs that appeals to little kids so much?
I don't know. They're sort of ferocious, but when they're kind of a small plastic kind of character,
Yeah.
they're kind of not actually dangerous, but they can kind of go, "Rrrr."
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess because they're fantastical creatures, but still apparently kind of were real, kind of
Yeah.
makes them quite exciting.
That's right. I think the depiction of when I was a child of what dinosaurs used to look like has changed. Like I think now we realise they've probably had feathers, and so like all the drawings that I had as a kid, they were just like big lizards. But I think the consensus
All kind
seems
of avian ones.
yeah, they all seem to have maybe be like sort of ostriches running around or something, but. That, yeah, I don't know. Well, that's a bit of a tangent. That could be a conversation for another day. So you've done. That was your sort of backstory into that, and so yeah, you had quite a curveball thrown your way. Was it about 5 or 6 years ago?
2021. Yeah, so I had done the Cool Mum for the first time in 2020, and it sort of was all gearing up to do all sorts of exciting things, taking it to Australia. And then one night was just kind of rubbing my sore ribs and kind of came across a big marble in my boob and then a big marble in my armpit, which was a major curveball, especially given I'd had a normal mammogram 5 months earlier that said, oh yeah, you're all good.
Wow.
So at that point I learnt about breast density, which is a whole nother topic. But
yeah.
So that's kind of part of the show, is kind of educating people about. So take home message, folks. Check for lumps in your boobs and balls, because you can't kind of assume that all is well. So you do need to feel on the first, is kind of a bit of a
slogan that they give you.
Yeah, it's kind of.
What does that mean? Feel
on the first, and that kind of applies to guys as well as women. Of kind of like feel for lumps in your body or skin changes or dimples or weird things going on.
Yeah.
And feel on the first is basically on the first of the month.
Wow.
You kind of have a bit of a self grope and see what you can find.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know. I was going to say, I still remember, because it was you and me, and then what was his name? Tim Mueller, I think it was.
Yeah.
We had pitched, we sort of put together
for the new convention centre, Yeah,
we were putting together like some sort of entertainment tender. And I remember you mentioned it sort of offhandedly, like you said something like, oh, yeah, something might have happened, but it might be nothing, or you just kind of mention it.
Kind of just some vague kind of hint of maybe a few health issues on the horizon, but maybe nothing. But I don't remember how much later it was that you sort of mentioned it or announced it or something. Yeah, and just said, "Hey team," yeah.
Yeah, so I still remember. I very vividly remember that for some reason.
Well, I guess particularly if we were in the middle of kind of business negotiations.
Well, yeah. I think it was the reason it stuck in my head is because I think we all sort of think, it'll be right, nothing's really going to happen. And were you in Christchurch for the earthquake? Was your property or your house or anything that damaged, or was everything sort of...
Yeah, we had to move out for 6 weeks to get kind of foundations kind of realigned, but yeah, we basically got our house repainted and a new driveway and nice new floorboards. So
yeah, I remember walking home from that thinking like, I'm pretty sure everything will be all good, but you wonder if this is going to be the one time that actually no, everything's not all good. And so
no, exactly, yeah. But yeah, I mean, when I found a lump in my armpit as well as in my boob, I kind of, a medical degree comes in handy at that point where you go, that's not a good combination.
Right, I see. So then I'm sure, have you been through this a whole bunch? Have you taken people through like what happened kind of next on podcasts before? Or, like, is this old hat for you?
I've been on a few, one that's sort of specifically a breast cancer podcast and one that's a kind of chronic health kind of type podcast and various other ones.
Yeah.
So sort of then you sort of get into a big whirlwind of investigations and it was interesting though, my kind of knee-jerk reflex, like because I'd messaged my GP on the portal saying, have you got my results for our appointment tomorrow? And he said, yes, I'm sorry, bring a support person. And I kind of went, that doesn't sound very good. And he went, yep, I'm sorry.
It's like when you
and so I kind of knew. I was actually supposed to be doing a comedy gig that night with Tina up in Rangiora. And so I kind of messaged her and I went, sorry, Tina, just been diagnosed with cancer. Sorry to let you down. She said, that's a pretty good excuse. No
I think no one's going to be upset with
but
you
yeah,
for that.
I went and kind of, after sort of crying and hugging my husband and things, I went and kind of sat in the bath for hours and just started kind of dictating stuff. And I kind of went, maybe I've got a tragic personal story for my next comedy show.
Oh, so it was that quick? You already thought about it?
Literally that quick, because I
Wow.
kind of went, okay, this is completely shit. Let's try and quickly brainstorm silver linings. Okay, I can do a documentary, I can write a book, I can do a comedy show, I can kind of do public talking about it, I can become a patient advocate, I can, I was just, all of these things were kind of coming into my mind of, I'm going to do something useful with this. So that kind of, when the going gets tough, do projects seems to be my go-to. So I definitely did projects.
Yeah, I heard, I forget who it was a writer, an actor, or somebody had a child pass away, and so he threw himself into his work, and he said something about work is the opposite of grief, or something along those lines. So,
yeah, and I think it's kind of true, because interestingly, sort of, it was probably a few years after my treatment that I kind of had a bit of a wobble in terms of kind of going, well, I've been through a lot.
Like it all kind of set in at that point.
Yeah, well, I think I just was so kind of proactive. Like I was making vlogs every day. I was documenting everything, kind of running all these different Facebook groups, making short films about hair loss, grief and cold capping, setting up websites, kind of, I was just very action stations. And so I think that was almost kind of almost in a slightly kind of manic state of being able to cope with things by being very busy and very goal orientated. So so I actually stayed very kind of upbeat through most of my treatment, I think, because it had a purpose and a meaning. And I can distinctly remember the night before my surgery, I kind of went, okay, so it's like evicting an unwanted squatter. So let's kind of write some comedy about this. It's kind of housing market's difficult, so it's just unwanted squatters just moved into my boob. And, so just started kind of writing a whole lot of kind of comedy about that as my way of doing it.
How soon between diagnosis and surgery was it?
It was about 7-8 week wait.
It's quite long.
And part of that is they do all sorts of complicated testing on the tumour to work out what type it is, because that affects the kind of, I was going to be having chemo and I had to have a whole body scan to see if I had stage 4 cancer, which was definitely the most stressful part of the whole kind of process, when they go, we just need to check whether it's spread around your entire body. You know. But fortunately, you're in a whole different reality when having stage 2 breast cancer is good news. So I was all geared up to have chemo, and then they decided that I had a different type of breast cancer and that I would be having surgery first. So then I was able to go off on holiday with my family as planned, and kind of... So, I definitely developed quite a sort of YOLO philosophy. I was suddenly kind of going to my daughter, let's go skiing for the day. Let's do this. Let's do that. Just very much kind of making the most of every day when you have that kind of wake-up call.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, I've heard that... as weird as it sounds, apparently like testicle cancer is one of the better types to get, because they're so far removed from the rest of your sort of, your internal organs and everything. Is breast cancer quite dangerous because it's right up kind of where your heart is and everything like that? Yeah,
I mean, it does have the advantage of kind of being sort of on the outside of the body, a bit like kind of testicles that you can kind of chop bits out without. Whereas, I've got a friend at the moment with kind of ovarian cancer, and once you're chopping out all inside there, you start getting into a whole lot more difficulties in terms of side effects and things.
Oh, the ovaries are quite hard to remove, are they?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, just, you've got kind of bladders and all sorts of things.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you don't want to poke.
Sort of important kind of bits going on in there, and so when you start kind of chopping around in there and taking a whole lot of stuff out, you end up with problems, whereas you can chop lots of boobs off and kind of there's a lot of psychological aspect to that, but once you've finished having children, boobs don't have kind of a huge amount of essential life kind of requirements. So
I suppose that's true, isn't it? I was going to say, do you think if you were a fella and you got one of your testes removed, do you think you'd get the prosthetic, or do you think you'd just roll with the one?
I don't know, yeah.
I've wondered that myself.
I mean, it might depend kind of what stage of life I was at too.
Yeah.
Like if I was kind of out on the dating scene and wanted to kind of have nice symmetry going. I have kind of a sort of joke kind of at the end, sort of like, check for lumps in your boobs and balls so you can stay matchy, because I talk about how a lot of kind of cancer treatment sort of stops you being matchy by causing asymmetry around the body. With arms blowing up with lymphedema and boobs being different sizes and things.
That's right.
But yeah, so I mean, I was lucky that I had a really great surgeon who was able to kind of pop out my lump and then kind of give me a breast lift and jiggle things round. And like I talk about having a perky B and a flaccid D.
That's right.
But yeah, I'm a bit more symmetrical than that. But actually, shout out to Tim Kelly who said, is a semi-flaccid D a dick joke?
Right.
When I was talking about a D cup boob that was semi-flaccid. But yeah, I think for Tim, everything's a dick joke. But,
right.
Love you, Tim.
Yeah, no, big fan of Mr. Kelly. Although he should have listened a little better there, I think. You also had to have some kind of, you had like I don't know what it was, like a tube going up your arm or something that you got.
I had a PICC line in for chemotherapy where it's basically kind of like an IV line, except it's one that kind of stays in there for months on end, kind of strapped into your arm. So so it's kind of all a bit kind of gory how the tube kind of goes almost to your heart through your blood vessels and things.
I think I'm too squeamish for that, hey?
But yeah, you feel very much like you're on some kind of production line and your body isn't really yours, and just kind of different things are happening to it as you're lying on radiotherapy tables and going in for surgery and being kind of examined, and toxic chemicals being injected in. And
is radiotherapy, I had a friend that had radiotherapy for a brain injury that he had. Is that like, is it they do surgery with like radio waves or something like that?
Yeah, no, radiotherapy is basically where they zap kind of a very kind of defined part of your body with kind of beams of radiotherapy that so it's basically a little bit like, say, if you were going to have a new lawn, you might kind of just let the weeds kind of grow and then you'd kind of spray them out before you planted the kind of grass. So radiotherapy is a bit like kind of the spraying the weeds, so just trying to get rid of any last little cancer cells that could be floating around there. So it's just kind of zapping the area.
I see.
But it's all very kind of sci-fi kind of as you're lying there for like alien abduction vibes.
Yeah, he said they built a mask like exactly of his head, and you can't move your head at all, otherwise they'll miss or something.
No, my dad had that too when he had bowel cancer that went to his brain, sadly. But I remember his it's sort of like something from some kind of horror movie, those radiotherapy kind of masks. But
it's did you, because you've been on one of the you've been on a couple of the charity shows we did for the cancer society, Did you have much to do with them while you were going through this?
Yeah, a little bit. Like at the Cancer Society place, they have kind of psychologists, like cancer psychologists, who are really helpful to chat to through the process, and lymphedema physios to try and stop your arm blowing up. And so sort of I went to a couple of Cancer Society kind of morning teas, but most people were kind of about 40 years older than me, kind of, and given I'm 55, that sort of was definitely
that's what surprised me about the gigs that we did for them, is I was expecting to see the full range of like little kids to like grandpa and granddad, but it was like mostly people quite old. And because I remember reading somewhere that I think when you get to that kind of age, it's almost just a matter of time. You're going to have something, something
well, I think with kind of men, you'll eventually get prostate cancer. It's just a case of whether you outlive it or something else gets you kind of beforehand or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, also with the Breast Cancer Foundation, they have all sorts of kind of funding for things, and they have really cool nurses who you can chat to on the phone and things, and they fund psychology appointments and lymphedema physios, and so there's some pretty cool stuff. I'm actually doing at New Zealand Comedy Fest, I'm doing my shows as fundraisers for the Cancer Society.
Nice.
So decided to go for Cancer Society just because they cover the broad range of cancer. And also I made a short film about cold capping during chemotherapy to stop your hair falling out, and the Cancer Society's put that on their website. So
cool. What is cold capping? I remember I did see you upload some videos, but I was going over my head a little bit as to what's happening. Yeah.
So basically, it's kind of freezing your scalp so that your hair follicles go into hibernation, so they're less likely to get killed by chemo. And so it's not all that common in New Zealand, whereas it's standard care, Australia, America, UK. It's kind of lots and lots of people doing it. It's kind of free, part of the NHS in the UK, but in New Zealand, people have hardly heard of it. So wanted to spread the word. But had a nice story that... because I set up a website about it, that a woman who'd said no to chemo because she didn't want to lose her hair saw my website and found out about cold capping and then said yes to chemo.
Awesome.
So, you don't really think kind of through comedy that you can save lives, but you potentially can.
You saved some hair, I guess, as well.
Save hair and save lives.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's this might be a naive question, but your hair can grow back after chemotherapy, or is that it? Yeah,
although like the reason I kind of looked into cold capping was the chemo I had has about 20% chance of permanent hair loss, like that it doesn't grow back.
Wow.
So, whereas the cold capping seems to prevent that. So that kind of made me go, I think I might give that a go.
Does it feel like... Do you really feel the cold when it's on your head?
Yeah, well, it's like that sort of ice cream headache kind of feeling, but it sort of keeps going. But the secret to that is to take lorazepam beforehand, and then you're just like super chill about everything, and you just kind of go, oh yeah.
How many sessions do you need to do?
I was lucky I only had 3 rounds of chemo, whereas a lot of people have like 16 and things with breast cancer. So
you just do it once before you have chemo?
Well, no, you keep going every 25 minutes for about 6 or 7 hours. You have these caps taken on and off, and so you need someone else to do it for you usually. Yeah. So my husband kind of did a long shift and he's pretty obsessive, so he had like all the thermometers out and the alarms going off.
He
definitely had us. We kind of trained up a friend who was going through breast cancer and her husband, and the guy said, "Don't tell Marty," but I ignored all of his spreadsheets and I just winged it.
That's right.
But Marty seriously had spreadsheets.
Oh, sorry, Marty. Angus is your son, isn't he?
Yes,
my bad. Yeah.
Freudian slip.
Yeah, hopefully not. So you just do it once before your chemo, but it's a long kind of...
Well, you do it for about an hour before the infusion starts, and then all the way through your infusion, which might go on for several hours, and then for more hours when you get home. So there's kind of video footage of me in the spa pool at home with this kind of ice cold cap on, pretty delirious on lorazepam, nearly sliding under the water.
Wow. So your body's hot in the spa pool, but your head is freezing cold. Wow.
Yeah. So it's and then I'd be in the bath, and then I'd be in bed with the electric blanket on, and So it's a lot going through chemo.
Yeah, I've heard it's very like you're kind of out of it for a lot of it, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I mean, some people get really, really sick, and kind of by the third one, I could barely like kind of walk across this room without having to lie on the floor. So that kind of extreme fatigue is pretty full on. But luckily I didn't really get any long-term side effects except maybe chemo brain. I feel like I've lost about half my IQ since chemo.
Oh, really? Wow.
Like word finding difficulty and ability to kind of do basic maths completely gone.
I know what do you call it? It's
Did you have chemo too?
No, I'm just an idiot. I've heard that chemo is essentially just you're blasting your body with radiation or chemicals, and then just sort of hoping that the cancer goes before you do, sort of thing, right?
Yeah. So it is kind of very toxic chemicals that do damage normal cells, especially cells in the body that divide rapidly. So things like fingernails, your gut, esophagus, your hair follicles. Yeah. That's why people's nails fall off, hair falls out, kind of get really inflamed, sort of mouth and that kind of thing. So, it's not a fun time, but it's amazing though. You just kind of do what you need to do. I think when you're going, everybody goes, "Oh, you're so brave," and kind of, but most people going through cancer treatment just kind of do the next thing they need to do to get through. To me, it's way braver doing a comedy show about cancer than going through cancer treatment. Going through cancer treatment was kind of a no-brainer. You just kind of did it. Whereas to actually make a conscious decision to kind of write a comedy show about cancer requires a lot more bravery, I think, to actually do that and go out in public doing it. Yeah,
so I guess that sort of leads next quite nicely into how did you feel sort of how do you get started in that sort of thing? How long between your treatment and then getting up on stage to kind of try some of this material? And that was it? Yes,
I mean, for me, writing comedy was a coping mechanism during the actual cancer. It was quite cathartic, just kind of writing stuff and trying to find funny stuff as I was writing as kind of a way of coping with it. And then it was probably... I first did Cancer and Cartwheels as a work in progress at the end of 2023, and I finished my active cancer treatment end of 2021. So it was kind of 2 years later that I kind of put the whole show together, but it was probably kind of late 2022, so maybe a year later that I started testing bits. But I can still remember kind of the first set I did, and I was like terrified, going, "Oh my God, what if people just kind of really don't want to hear about cancer in a comedy show?" And I did the bit about kind of having a perky B and a flaccid D, so a millennial boob and a boomer boob, and that went down really well kind of the first time I did it. And I had a young couple come up to me afterwards and kind of went, "Oh, that was so amazing, it was so great, we sort of learnt lots from that set, as well as kind of finding it really funny. Thanks so much for kind of doing that." And so I think that kind of feedback from them really sort of helped me kind of go, okay, I think I can keep going with this, because there's definitely people out there, and these were young people, maybe kind of late 20s or something. So it made me realize I could connect with quite a wide demographic with this material, and people can kind of laugh and learn. But I think sort of what I tended to do was just kind of look at something difficult and see if there was like a kind of metaphor. So things like, boobs different sizes, that's pretty kind of yuck and difficult and distressing, but what's it like having one perky boob and one flaccid boob? Oh, it's kind of like one's younger than the other. Okay, so a millennial one and a boomer one. So you kind of sort of move from something difficult to a metaphor. And sometimes I think, certainly when I was improvising, an improviser who was training us kind of said, if you're kind of having a conversation in an improv scene, jump on kind of shiny words. So words that kind of jump out as just being a little bit kind of weird in the circumstance. Like, for example, I was diagnosed with triple positive cancer. And it's kind of like, ooh, triple positive, weird words for cancer. If somebody told you were triple positive about anything else, you'd be going, hey, fantastic. How uplifting is that? So it's just sort of like pouncing on anything that sort of seems silly, or where the wordplay, like when there's kind of pathology tests and reports. And then so I do a kind of skit that I'm doing a job interview for being a breast cancer patient.
Right.
And so I talk about kind of, that I got a very high grade in my pathology tests, as if it was kind of a great academic record. So I think there's, various kind of ways you can kind of find silly, fun things from even really difficult stuff.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that I think is really important, though, is when you're talking about tough stuff in comedy, to make it your story and not to kind of generalize, because if I went on stage sort of like, breast cancer, pretty funny, am I right? There's no way that that would go down okay. But, I found that if I kind of went, I've recently beaten cancer, and got everybody to cheer and be on board with, yay, kind of good news, then that kind of got people less worried about the topic, because they already knew from the beginning that it was kind of a happy story.
Yeah. Did you ever meet Liam Malone? He's got like prosthetic legs, and you almost wouldn't tell, because like he's just like a fashionable guy, and I had seen him do some sets where he does all these jokes about being like handicapped and prosthesis and stuff, and sometimes the crowd's like, why is he doing all these jokes? And then he pulls his leg up and they're like, oh right, he's talking about himself. So that was a pitfall that he had to navigate as well.
Of just working out kind of, I need to make it quite explicit.
At the start,
it's kind of like, hey, let's have a look at my prosthesis. Right,
exactly.
now let's do some handicap jokes, because it's kind of my story. Whereas if you're a real kind of good-looking guy who looks like they're just making fun of people who are handicapped, it's not going to go down well.
No, exactly. Did you ever have the hurdle where, because sometimes I think I've done this as well, but comedians will sometimes forget that the audience, they'll hear you use a word, like let's say cancer is the punchline for something. It almost doesn't matter how funny the joke is. Just hearing that word almost puts them on the back foot a little bit. And
absolutely.
Sometimes I've heard very funny suicide jokes before, and you know what I mean? But there's
still at least half the audience clenching their buttocks, kind of going, oh.
Did you ever run into that? And then
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, even now when I've got some cancer jokes that are like really well formed and polished and kind of reliably kind of hit, if I'm like, I did a 30-minute headline set a couple of weeks ago where I did kind of the first 10 minutes was all kind of menopause jokes and stuff about vaginal atrophy, and the crowd was just about falling off their seats, and it was kind of a riotous time. And then I did 10 minutes of cancer stuff, and it was like my best cancer stuff, but I could just feel like people were still laughing, but it just had a different feel to it.
Right.
And then I kind of went back to kind of parenting stuff about kids moving home and stuff, and you could feel just everybody kind of relax and be kind of let loose again. So that was quite interesting with the same audience, same night. Just kind of like feeling that, and I found that quite a lot, but I don't get that at my solo show because it's called Cancer and Cartwheels. People kind of sign up for a cancer story.
Exactly,
so there's not like a gear shift that kind of happens because you're sort of taking people through a story and they know that it's going to be a story about cancer. But even in that, I find the cancer diagnosis kind of bit still kind of feels like there's a little bit more tension in it. But as soon as you get onto like boobs and vaginas, you just feel people just go, oh yeah, right, really just laugh and relax, because we're into kind of a kind of zone where we're not kind of all going, being diagnosed with cancer.
Sometimes you can feel that if you go for the setup of a bit, like I was doing some jokes about Elon's little sea guile that he threw up, and you have to really quickly, I would just blatantly say this is not a pro-Nazi bit, and like you almost see people like okay, where's he going with this? I think maybe
there's certain words, there's jokes that I've just kind of got rid of because there's just a word in it that just makes the audience tense, even if you're not kind of using that word in the way that would normally make them tense. They just hear a word and but so it's definitely super challenging especially doing a whole kind of hour on a cancer story. But yeah, I mean, I do feel really proud of the show. I think because it is such a challenge to do, for people to kind of laugh and have a fun time. And also I think in the solo hour I do take people on sort of quite a journey of, I hate the word journey, but it is kind of different emotions that people might feel through the show.
Yeah.
So so it is a really cool show to perform in. I think because it feels really meaningful, because there is a lot of health messaging kind of in the show. And actually one of my sister's friends came to the show in Wellington, went home, checked her boobs, found a lump. It was cancer.
Wow.
It was picked up early, and it did seem to be that kind of that.
Yeah.
I've got a song called Check for Lumps in Your Boobs and Balls kind of at the end. It's a very, try and stick in your mind to go home and kind of have a bit of a grope, guys.
That's definitely
so you sort of hear things like that and go, if one person finds their cancer earlier because they came to my show, wow, that makes my show worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one thing that the Cancer Society, it was what Cherie was saying anyway, is that through us doing stuff, we're sort of attracting a bit of a younger audience than what they would normally get. Like I tape my special in their function room, and she's like, it's the first time I'd seen so many people like under 30 in the room. So I think it's cool. It's cool that we're, you can very much feel like job done, job well done when you're kind of helping people.
I think
learn.
probably one of my best kind of moments in comedy was after I'd done the show in Hokitika.
Yeah.
And they had kind of cup of tea with the artist kind of afterwards. And there was just a big circle of women all having a cup of tea and talking about really personal women's health stuff, all like complete strangers chatting together. And I think because I'd been up on stage talking about vaginal atrophy and boobs being different sizes and all sorts of
really
things.
Broke the ice there,
it was a real icebreaker, the comedy show. And and people were going, oh, it's so great. And even family members who haven't told me about their breast cancer in any detail kind of have confided in me about how they've never got over the changes in their body and things like that, so it really does seem to be an icebreaker in terms of sort of, and if it allows women to then go to their GP and go, hey, went to a comedy show, I think I've got vaginal atrophy. I actually did the quite a lot lot of the Cancer and Cartwheels show for a big group of GPs in Wellington and in Christchurch. And I sort of said, I hope there wasn't too much sort of vaginal atrophy content. And some of the GPs said, well, if any of the GPs are bashful about kind of vaginal atrophy, they shouldn't be. They should be kind of all on board with it. And
it's not something I'd ever heard that can happen until I heard the bit about it. So I mean,
I went to medical school and I didn't learn about vaginal. The first time I heard about it was a friend of mine said that her oncologist thought she had it, and I went, what is this horrible sounding thing? And looked it up and went, I didn't even know. So atrophy, for anyone listening, just means withering away. So it's your girly parts withering away. But imagine if there was penile atrophy.
I was going to ask you that. Is there such a thing?
There'd be big institutes kind of if that was a common
industry
problem.
To cure penile atrophy.
Vaginal atrophy kind of happens to some degree to pretty much all women during menopause. And, but kind of people don't talk about it, and so there's all these women around going, why is all these weird things happening? So if you can kind of make the untalkable talkable about, then that feels really worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a part that I think a lot of comics maybe that are listening might be able to learn a thing or two is you've got quite a strong sort of marketing I don't know, force is the wrong word. You know what I mean? You've got I remember the Cool Mum.
Sounds quite Star Wars.
It does a little bit, eh?
I have the marketing force. May the force be with you.
This is the show you're looking for. But so you've done the Cool Mum was your previous show, and that had its own aesthetic. Then Cancer and Cartwheels also has its own kind of aesthetic, and then we've sort of seen you kind of A/B testing
some little previews and kind of which post.
Is that still under wraps, or are we allowed to talk?
Yeah. So the show that I'm writing at the moment's called #Coping, which is all about kind of expectations and how we cope with them and how we cope with kind of tough stuff and conflicting roles and things like that in our lives. And it's got some BARBI without an E for legal reasons. Characters popping up to be toxically positive versions of like doctor and menopause and various things. So that's kind of definitely got its own kind of aesthetic as well. My kind of process tends to be kind of do the poster image and then kind of put the show together from there. I like to kind of do the images at the beginning as a bit of a sort of inspiration for the vibe of the show. And
have you been using the same designer for each poster?
No, I haven't actually. It's been a little bit. The current poster designer's actually based in the UK. I saw some photos that some Melbourne comedians had done that just looked incredible. So
cool.
when I was over doing a preview show in Melbourne, and I got Chris Hillary, who's a very cool photographer over there, to take some photos. And then he kind of recommended a few poster designers who I reached out to. And this guy in the UK has done sort of an incredible job coming up with some very cool kind of designs.
They're very cool.
And I mean, he kind of went to a Barbie museum as part of inspiration.
Wow.
You know, he kind of next level kind of commitment to the bit, really, to get on board with kind of giving that vibe. So it's all about so the poster's kind of me in a sort of Barbie costume, kind of looking very unhinged and not coping.
What I quite liked about it was all the icons on the box were like all the things. I assume
parent, menopause, cancer, kind of.
It's almost
doctor.
like. Do you remember the G.I. Joe? They'd always say he had kung fu grip. That was like a thing you'd see. So you've got like your I don't know, your abilities or whatever on the side of the box.
Or just like all these conflicting roles and difficult, tough stuff in life, all in one kind of nifty package. So. Really excited to be putting that show together. And
if there were any comics that were listening that would, if you could give any advice about maybe how to market your show, what kind of advice would you give them about finding their sort of aesthetic? And because you're quite good with creating. You'll get you've got that bit. I think it's in the Cool Mum where you get an audience member to wear a T-shirt, and then you can easily turn that into content.
And I had that at Edinburgh Fringe as well. So I had audience volunteers who'd come up and they'd get kind of a the Cool Mum branded T-shirt to then kind of leave the gig and walk around. Especially when I was at Adelaide Fringe, with it kind of being all sort of quite close together, you'd see kind of Cool Mum T-shirts walking around, and people would be waving at each other of, you've been to the Cool Mum too. And
that's really good.
So it's pretty, it was sort of a bit of a fluke kind of marketing thing to get audience members to be your walking posters, basically.
Yeah, that's great.
But so I think the Cool Mum had sort of quite a clear kind of brand to it, I guess, and quite a clear audience of parents with teenagers primarily. So it was quite easy then to kind of work out, okay, so let's send ads to parents of teenagers. Let's think where parents of teenagers might see stuff. And
absolutely.
like with Cancer and Cartwheels, looking at people who have had lived experience of breast cancer, or people who are in a kind of menopausal woman kind of age bracket, or people who work in the area, or people who might be interested in finding out about these kind of personal stories. So it's thinking about who your audience are, I think, is really, and also just thinking about all the different angles of, that it's not just kind of social media ads and a few posters. What groups can you reach out to? Who can you email? I've actually been doing a kind of LinkedIn kind of search for the show, finding I found an amazing kind of breast cancer researcher in Adelaide who's now putting posters up all around kind of the University of Adelaide and the Breast Cancer Research Institute. And, so you do have to kind of think outside the square a little bit about reaching your audience, especially kind of the more niche your show is, the more you need to kind of really find your people.
Yeah. I've just learnt, so like, have you seen those trading cards that I've been hawking
very cool.
at the moment? So I've just realized one thing about people actually is they love the idea of a collection or a set.
Yeah.
And so I thought people would just pick, I like that one, I like that one, I like that one. But
but people want the whole set. Yeah.
And so I think one pitfall a lot of comics fall into is they sort of try to go for an American style hour where the name has kind of nothing to do with the show. It's just sort of, just
random word that
unscrupulous
I've plucked.
or whatever it is. And I think especially when you're up and coming and people don't recognize your name straight off, it's important to have a good name that kind of tells people what the show is about. Sometimes people go a little bit overboard. Like, I think if he wasn't Guy Montgomery, having a show called 50,000 Guy Montgomery fans can't be wrong or something. It's like
it's a very Guy title.
It is a very Guy title. That's right. But like, if any comics listening, try to think about it from the point of view of like, if someone has no idea who you are, the other way you can grab them is with an evocative title. Like I think Panic at the Buffet was a pretty good title.
Yeah, no, exactly. And if you've got imagery that kind of fits with that to kind of get, what's the show going to be about.
Yeah.
If they don't recognize Taylor Ruddle as a kind of brand, they kind of go, oh, that show looks interesting. Yeah.
And then I think even just like the name The Cool Mum it's the economy of that is quite good because it's like very short. But people know automatically, like, I know what that show's about.
Yeah, it's very clear kind of what the vibe's going to be at the show. And, I'm hoping sort of Cancer and Cartwheels, Cancer, it's a little bit of a, kind of like it is what it says on the box, kind of and people Cartwheels hopefully kind of lightens that to kind of go, okay, Cartwheels, usually pretty silly and jovial, kind of, if there's some cartwheels added in, that sounds fun.
I think because the arc of the story was you learning to do them again, right?
Yeah. So essentially, I kind of had retained quite a lot of gymnastic ability, even into my 50s, being able to do the splits and cartwheels, being a cheerleader in 1990 kind of paid off well. So, and then after my cancer treatment, I tried to do a cartwheel on the beach and somewhat fortuitously asked my husband to video it, and it was very shit, basically.
You got the first one on video?
Yeah,
awesome.
Where I kind of like crumple mid-cartwheel and kind of fall into the sand, basically.
Good place to do it.
And then so I kind of decided it would be my quest to get a good cartwheel back. Kind of that would be my sign of physical recovery from cancer if I could do that. And so then kind of filmed a very good cartwheel kind of out in the sand dunes. I was sort of going to do cartwheels on stage, but sort of combination of needing to warm up in small stages and kind of head mics falling off and all sorts of things. I went, we'll just stick with kind of video footage and stirring music and kind of,
Does it get an applause break when they see it?
Yeah, quite often, There's usually a few applause breaks, kind of. I do a bit about body neutrality that's had quite a few applause breaks, kind of. People go, go sister, you kind of make that statement, you put that out there. So
very good.
I've sort of tried to get a balance that I hope I've got right of kind of having important messages in the show without kind of getting preachy about things. So I kind of do important message and then back to jokes, quite quickly to not kind of, although one reviewer said it would have been nice to kind of linger on a few of those poignant kind of moments to just kind of sit with the discomfort as people go, actually I do comment on other people's bodies the whole time. Kind of maybe I shouldn't do that, you know?
I think that was what Hannah Gadsby was talking about in Nanette, as to how quickly do you want to let somebody off the hook with a joke.
No, that's definitely kind of, that feels like quite a balancing act if you're sort of just holding people in a little bit of attention and then kind of, and
then you go for the joke. So we're just about coming up on 50 minutes now, so is there anything else you wanted to cover about the show or the cancer or anything like that, or shall we go into the questions?
Yeah. No, let's go into the questions.
Okay.
All sounds good.
So first of all, let's do the Am I the Asshole? So this is one.
Am I the arsehole?
Yeah.
Okay.
Listeners of the podcast will know the context of this, but yeah, basically, Am I the Asshole is a thing on Reddit where people can post like personal beefs and stuff they've had, and they basically get told if they're in the right or not. So here we go. So this one here is, the title is, Am I the Arsehole for making my BF's mum cry because of a petty, quote unquote, petty rule? So she's 21, her boyfriend's 24. They've been together for 2 years and they live together. His mother is very involved in his life, and then brackets, some might say overbearing, but I try to be respectful. She's nice, but has this way of pushing boundaries while acting like she means well. So, you know, we've all known people that
this all sounds very close to home. This kind of
So then the issue comes is that the poster, which is the 21 female, she has a no shoes in the house rule, but her mother or mother-in-law or boyfriend's mother sort of tries to get away with not doing it, and so they clash over that quite a bit. And so she just said, "Can you take your shoes off, please?" And the mother was sort of huffing and like, "Oh, are you really going to make me do that?" And then got a text later on from the boyfriend's dad saying that she made her cry and she feels like I'm trying to assert dominance over her in her son's home.
Right.
So,
sounds like kind of dogs peeing on other dogs kind of pee of like the...
I guess first of all, are you a shoe? Well, you've got shoes on now, but are you a shoes off or shoes on?
Yeah, I've actually got my shoes on your sofa, so that's kind of really,
You're asserting your dominance quite heavily there.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's hard floors or carpet question. I'd want more information. In a house that's all hard floors, no problems at all with shoes in the house, because you can just like kind of mop everything down. And if you're kind of lying on the hard floor, kind of, you know, that would be unusual. Yeah. Whereas I'm super precious about carpet.
Really?
Like kind of no shoes at all on kind of carpet. And so that, and you know, because you can like super sterilize hard floors. Carpets, much more difficult. So I have kind of like where we used to live, that was all hard floors, the entire house. You know, people could come in gumboots, I wouldn't care. Yeah. Whereas I am a bit more kind of take your shoes off where we live now, because it's got some new carpet in some of the rooms. So, But I think in that particular case, kind of the person's house kind of has the say on that. You know, I didn't, when I came into your house, ask whether it's a shoes on or shoes off situation, but I knew you're pretty casual, and so I figured kind of
whatever you want.
Figured would be all good to kind of. But you know, I mean, I'd be wondering whether the mother-in-law kind of hadn't had a recent pedicure and was going to feel embarrassed about kind of bare feet. You know, some people are a bit kind of more formal and kind of being barefoot in someone else's house or in socks kind of feels a bit kind of not right.
Yes.
So there could be all sorts of things going on, but I would always kind of respect the house owner's kind of rule, because, you know, there's all sorts of cultural things about shoes off. People have kind of, you know, also, you know, you might be someone who does yoga on the floor, and if someone's walked into the house with dog poo shoes, it's kind of not going to be a good look. So,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I think it sounds like this mother-in-law is kind of creating a bit too much drama, and probably it's not really about the shoes. It's more about the relationship, isn't it? It's kind of...
Like they probably butt heads all the time.
Yeah, you know, they're both kind of wanting to kind of be in charge of their relationship with this young man, and that kind of makes it kind of more tricky. I mean, my daughter and her boyfriend have kind of boomeranged back home in the last few years, but my daughter's like fiercely independent. Then, I mean, I could even feel they were having quite a kind of intense discussion about what flat they were going to apply for in Wanaka, and kind of because they clearly had kind of very different perspectives. I said, why don't you guys sort of work out what your non-negotiables are? And there was kind of a bit of glaring at me going on, but then then my daughter went to kind of her boyfriend, so Noah, what are your non-negotiables? And I think that actually was quite helpful. So my little bit of kind of being fleetingly over-involved was quite helpful then, I think, to just give them a little bit of a communication 101.
I wouldn't consider that being overbearing, but it is good to know. Well, people have to be open to ideas, right? It doesn't matter where the idea came from. It's a good idea. It's a good idea, right?
Yeah. And I think, in any kind of relationship, if you're sort of not finding common ground, to kind of work out your non-negotiables and then just see where you can go from there is quite useful. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, well, that was the Am I the Arsehole of the Week done. So I've got some, I just call these good ask questions because they're just interesting questions that I've nicked from various places. So they're all sort of rapid fire ones. You don't need to go super in depth. Like, don't overthink them.
We don't need to have a full psychological analysis.
Some people hear them and they go, oh no, and they want to give like the best answer. But
just like quick is good.
Yeah. So I would not be surprised if you don't have one. But do you have a comfort movie or a comfort TV show?
My comfort TV show tends to be whatever I'm watching at the time. So it's more about the comfort of getting into your dressing gown, kind of having a night at home and watching TV. So, for me, like, watching TV is a huge treat because I don't do it very often. Yeah, I was going to say, you seem like you'd maybe go and exercise or something as you're kind of, you're sort of, what is it, not wind, wind down. That's the one. Yes, swimming in the sea would be my kind of real kind of like happy place comfort zone. Yeah. Okay. Do you have a sick day ritual? A sick day ritual?
Yeah, like, do you do something, just a little thing that you do whenever you're sicked up, you feel better, or just a kind of...
Yeah, trying to think. I think last time I was sick, I had COVID and I was kind of had a fever of 40 and ambulances were being called. So my ritual was trying to stay alive, I think, at that point. Yeah, I think sort of like kind of warm kind of lemon honey drinks are kind of quite a nurturing thing, and just kind of snuggling in bed and just kind of allowing myself to be in bed for a whole day, which I wouldn't normally do. Yeah, so that kind of giving permission of saying, you are sick, you need to rest, you are in bed, kind of,
That's a great one. So this is sort of connected to what are you watching right now, if anything?
Well, what I've been trying to watch all week is season 3 of The White Lotus, but my husband has been working.
Do you have to watch it together?
We have to watch it together because it's a combined one, so I can't like kind of watch it separately. And so far we haven't quite managed to kind of find, because the night that he was free, I was doing a comedy gig, and so tonight I think might be kind of episode 1 of The White Lotus. Yeah, you
have to send him a Google Calendar invite or something for a day.
Just like 8:30 p.m. in the TV room.
Sofa. Wonderful. Do you have a favourite meme?
Favourite meme? I would have to go back through the various kind of memes that I have kind of made copies of and reshared to. But yes, I think I have many that I have liked, but I don't think I have one stored in my brain to be able to recall.
No worries. So there's another. Do you know what a struggle meal is?
No, you might have to define that.
When you're a student, you'll eat like a ramen noodle sandwich, or the kind of cheap things like that. But,
so like baked beans on toast, or kind of instant noodles or something.
So, but then sometimes you have ones that you like so much that even when you do have money, you go back and make them.
Go back to that.
Do you have a favourite struggle meal?
Mashed banana on toast. I could probably. I mean, pretty much most of my diet is mashed banana on toast or avocado on toast.
Wow.
That could just, then cheese on toast. Yeah.
Anything on toast?
Anything on toast. So, toast is my struggle meal, and it's also most of my diet.
Kind of a staple.
Yeah.
I've actually been pretty good on the wagon since like November. I haven't had bread. I've had bread once this year. And then not else. So
couldn't not do bread that.
I'm not missing it as much as I thought I would, but it's
just like I'm not having bread. I'm just having chips.
Just pasta, rice, potato. What is the next one? So is there a food or from either history or just something that you'd like to go back in time and try?
Ooh. Woolly mammoth.
You like to try woolly mammoth?
That's going back in time a long way. Yes.
You'd be sitting around a fire. With some cave
I
people
think that kind of just sort of berries on the side, a good hunk of woolly mammoth, and kind of sitting by the campfire with
a nice vibe.
kind of men and kind of not much with spears guarding. And
Doesn't that sound like a wonderful time?
Just back to basics.
Yeah, keep it simple. I guess maybe cartwheels would be the answer, but do you have a skill that people would be surprised to learn that you have?
Yeah, maybe doing splits on the bar.
On the bar, yeah.
Yep.
It's definitely... That's it as in a gymnastic bar or No,
tavern. Like at the pub kind of thing. Yeah, kind of Florida Keys, kind of when I was 21. There's kind of a photo of me in some kind of bright yellow jumpsuit doing the splits on the bar. And pretty sure I could reenact that photo again if need be.
Nice. What else do we have? Do you have a favourite Wikipedia rabbit hole that you've gone down?
Well, I think I'm definitely somebody who, when we're watching a movie, I kind of go, who is that actor? And then I Google kind of the actor, and then we kind of look at kind of what that actor has been. So we're actually kind of missing quite a lot of the movie, and then there'll be some other actor, and then we'll kind of be looking at that, and then I'll be kind of reading their Wikipedia page, and kind of then I'll be
other things.
And I'm always interested in people's kind of early life, kind of like their backstory, kind of before they were famous.
That's great. Do you have a favourite quote by somebody else?
That's kind of, I'm sure I do.
It's hard to recall just like
It's hard to recall things, especially with kind of limited brain capacity.
Yeah.
I think probably, well, it's not really a quote. It's more of a kind of slang phrase, like of YOLO, that kind of you only live once. I think that's kind of become more important in my life around kind of just, do the stuff. Don't kind of, if you want to go live by the sea, go live by the sea. If you want to go to Edinburgh Fringe, go to Edinburgh Fringe. If you want to kind of do hot yoga, So not really a kind of quote, but kind of a little kind of...
I feel like YOLO has sort of transcended in a sense that, like, it used to be a thing people would say jokingly, but now when you hear it, you're like, yeah, it's really deep.
YOLO. That's kind of what life's all about. It's the meaning of life. You only live once. Harness the moment. Yeah.
That's it. I think that's about the list. We've got one more that I like asking people. If you could ask anybody from history one question and they had to tell you the truth or, answer honestly, who would you ask and what would you ask?
Well, I could say kind of Hitler and why.
Why, yeah. Be a good way to, yeah.
But I think why would probably be because he's just a complete asshole.
He would have his reasons, but I don't know whether we would...
The Aryan race superiority and all that kind of
we
thing.
Need living space, whatever he said.
Would be kind of all a bit disheartening.
Yeah. You probably wouldn't want to hear what he's got to say.
But, it'd be nice to be able to go back in time and somehow kind of redirect Hitler, maybe into an improv class or something. Try and find kind of something that he could kind of get his dopamine hit from that isn't concentration camps. It would be, something like improv, I reckon, because you are kind of creating scenes in the moment. There's, your adrenaline's up, things are working, dopamine's pinging. I reckon if Hitler got into improv instead of kind of getting the Nazi party going,
being a dictator,
we could have changed the whole world with just a bit more theatre sports. So, so maybe that,
Why not?
And just like, could there have been anything that anybody said to Hitler that would have changed the course of history? If you kind of had a chance to have a bit of a heart-to-heart with him, could you have redirected kind of things? So
I listened to a podcast series about him. Apparently he was quite the sort of what we would call an incel today. He was kind of his whole, he was very reclusive in the beginning. And so I wonder at what point you would have to sort of get to him to probably before he got all the power, because then that kind of is quite self-perpetuating, isn't it? So it'd have to get him when he was just kind of sort of
because he went to art school, didn't he, and kind of failed and things. So, yeah, you'd probably have to have got him sort of at art school when his kind of ideology was still kind of forming, and try and kind of get him into improv then. So maybe if he'd gone to drama school instead of art school, did some improv.
Well, he was a very good public speaker.
Found the thrill of, I mean, if he'd gotten to stand-up, you know,
yeah,
he could have had his special. He could have got the thrill of kind of being on stage, people laughing instead of
he would have definitely gotten the sort of social acknowledgement that I think it sounds like he was seeking that in the beginning.
Yeah, because I think a lot of stand-up comedians are kind of yearning for something, and stand-up comedy kind of fills that void. And so Hitler probably had a void, and it kind of went into a very, very
wrong direction,
tragic kind of direction. So, I think if we could have got Hitler into some form of comedy early on,
might have been a very different. Might have unfolded very differently, eh?
Yeah, but imagine how good you'd feel if you'd been able to change the course of history. Like if we could go back in time, go, yo, Hitler, come on down, come do an open mic.
5-minute spots, brother.
Yeah, I mean that would be great, wouldn't it? If we could go back and do that, maybe that's.
I feel like that's a movie.
Find a little time machine, kind of like Hitler does an open mic, kind of.
Alrighty, well that's basically the perfect amount of time. Let's talk about what you've got coming up. So I think this one is going to drop in the sort of middle of March. I'll just double check that. So you are going to drop on the 17th of March. So what after that have you got?
So
you're
so I'll
sort of
be
in
going
Australia?
sort of into Melbourne soon after that, and kind of so I can kind of do Melbourne onwards.
Yep. Yeah, so let us know what you've got there.
So cool. So coming up next, I have got Melbourne Comedy Festival, which I'm doing from the 31st of March till the 6th of April. And then I go to Sydney Comedy Festival at the end of April. And then I have got New Zealand Comedy Festival, Wellington and Auckland. And in the middle of New Zealand Comedy Festival, I'm popping back and doing Brisbane Comedy Festival. So, so kind of...
many festivals.
April, May, very chock-a-block with... and that's all with Cancer and Cartwheels. So... so lots happening and lots of admin with doing self-produced that number of festivals.
Yeah. I was going to say you're working on coping for the next year's kind of
so my kind of timeline is to kind of do 30 minutes of the kind of hashtag coping content around September, and then a work in progress in January.
Nice.
Probably do the kind of smaller festivals next year, like really keen to get back to sort of Dunedin and Nelson and Whangarei and things like that.
Yeah.
And then probably do the same kind of big Australian festivals and New Zealand Comedy Fest kind of.
It's a good
the
system.
Following year is and maybe Edinburgh if it's all kind of pinging. We'll just see. But Edinburgh's major financial hit, so you've got to kind of work out your whys to go to Edinburgh these days. I think these days, she says, as if she's been going to Edinburgh since kind of 1994, but so Edinburgh's a maybe, but we'll see.
Brilliant. Have you got a website that is the sort of where all these will be, or social media? drjocomedy.com is where kind of all my stuff across comedy, books, psychiatrist, kind of the whole hybrid package of kind of me. Dr. Jo Comedy on Instagram and Facebook is kind of, and at Cancer and Cartwheels is my TikTok. There you go. Well, thank you for joining me, Dr. Jo, and all the best over in Australia for your dates coming up. Yeah, well, thank you. It's been a lot of fun chatting to you. Thank you for listening to Ruddle Me This. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave me a review on your favourite podcast platform. You can find me on social media at Taylor Ruddle Comedy on all the major platforms. You can also join patreon.com/Taylor Ruddle Comedy for free, which gets you access to all sorts of extras and behind-the-scenes content, as well as allows you to communicate directly with me and let me know what you think of the show. Tune in again next Monday for another episode of Ruddle Me This, and until then, Ruddle her out.
This has been a Tape Deck Media production. Thank you for listening.
Hey Ruddlers, I joined a group of podcasters that we are calling the Trailer Alliance, a group of podcasters that share each other's trailers at the end of the episodes and generally support each other. So at the end of each episode for the next few weeks, I'm going to be playing a trailer of one of the members of the Trailer Alliance. And here's one of them now. I hope you like it.
Top of the day, everyone. I'm Nisha.
And I'm Buddha Badass.
And we're the hosts of Hot Garbage True Crime Edition. Do you guys like true crime?
I really don't. I feel like you force me on this show every freaking time I come here.
Do you guys enjoy listening to victims and murderers and grotesque stuff?
People that are sick in the freaking head. That's who likes it. That's who likes it.
Well, if you like that kind of stuff, then you should totally check us out. I mean, every single Thursday, we drop the most hottest cases, and we have fun while doing it.
You drop the most hottest cases? You drop murder and death. Kill.
How many people can actually say that they have fun while listening to a true crime podcast? And I feel like that's what we do here.
So you're just not going to listen to me now? I'm just going to say this and you're not going to listen to me?
And you know what? Our listeners are not just our listeners, but they're our friends and our trash pandas. We love you guys.
They're a lot, and I will agree to that part, but I'm still just mad at you for just not talking to me. They're paying you this well to say all this.
So check out Hot Garbage on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Check us out. Every single Thursday, a new episode drops.
I officially hate this commercial. On some real.
Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com.